Hello everyone, this is Pastor Blake. We're continuing our study of the book of Daniel, chapter 2. In chapter 1, we see how Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and all of Israel were taken captive under the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Now, this would have been a hard time for them. I mean, this wasn't just hey, you're going to live here now. I mean, people were dying, because Israel would stand up to the force, but Babylon was too great at this moment. God allowed them to be given into the hands of Babylon. And we see how Daniel would have had to been struggling with, losing people that he knew. I mean, certain people he knew probably were dead at this point. And he was being forced into a new culture and situation. But all the while, all four of them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel, stayed faithful to God. And they said, you know what? Whatever's going to happen, we're going to stay faithful. And we see that going into chapter 2. Now, still, they were put into a 3-year training program to learn about the culture, the literature, the wisdom, everything about the Babylonian Empire. And they were given favor, and they were allowed to understand that, you know what, God is doing something here. Now, what he was doing, they probably couldn't have known at the time, but they were certainly given favor with the chief of the eunuchs that was over their kind of training. So we see in chapter 2, it opens up, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. He had a dream, and it was about a statue. Different parts were different elements, gold, silver, bronze, and iron. And then each one of them represented something different. But what the king did, he called in all of their enchanters, the magicians, the sorcerers, and he said, you know what? One of you needs to tell me what this dream is and interpret it. Now, he knew that anyone could just say anything to interpret a dream. But what he wanted to see is someone that could really hear from some kind of God about this dream that he had. And so he said, you're going to tell me the dream and then interpret it. And if no one can do that, I'm going to tear every one of you limb from limb and destroy your house and everything. Now that's a little evil, but we're not talking about a righteous king here. We're talking about a king of Babylon. And so Daniel heard of it. The news got to all of them and said, guys, we're kind of a part of these people. We're part of these people that's being trained as the wise men of Babylon. He told them, you need to pray to the God of heaven for mercy that he would spare us from this. And in that moment, we see a little something about Daniel. We see that he actually wasn't really expecting to have a dream given to him. He didn't even know if the Lord would get them out of this situation. He just said, just pray for the God of mercy. Well, all of a sudden, what happens? That night, Daniel has a dream. He actually has the dream that Nebuchadnezzar has. He has a dream and then is able to interpret it for the king. He told him, hey, guys, I knew the interpretation. He was brought in front of the king, and the king told him, he says, are you able to do this? And Daniel said, here is your dream. Now, what was the dream? We see it's interesting. It was a statue. The head was gold, and the chest and arms were silver. The middle and the thigh were bronze, and the legs were iron, and the feet partly were of iron and clay. Now, there's a lot of debate. There's some variances of what people agree, but certain kingdoms we know. The head must have been Babylon. It was pretty much guaranteed. It was said that Babylon was the head that was gold. And then we see the Medo-Persian Empire was probably the arms and the chest. It was started by Cyprus in 539 BC. And then we see the middle and the thighs of bronze were most likely Greece from Alexander the Great, 331 BC. And then the legs of iron, the feet partially of iron and clay, we see was most likely the Roman Empire, 63 BC to 476 AD. And then at that point, there was even a stone. It said a great stone struck the image and became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. What could be that stone? Well, we know the kingdoms were most likely these kingdoms. We see a decrease, though, in the value. You see the elements, gold, silver, bronze, iron and clay mixed together. We see that there is a decrease in the value and the splendor of these elements. We know gold is better than silver, silver is better than bronze, that idea. But at the same time, it most likely means that it was also a decrease in the moral value. That's the kind of value we're talking about here. Because as we know, the more evil the kingdoms got, but they also increased in the strength of themselves. What is gold? Gold is a very easy to manipulate. Silver is a little bit tougher. Bronze a little bit tougher than silver. And then iron's even better than silver and bronze and gold itself. So we see this value in the morality of the kingdoms going down. But we see the strength of the kingdoms going up. Even though the value is going down, the strength is going up. And at the very end, we see the mountain thrown to the earth. What could that have been? What happened within the Roman Empire? What was starting up? What was starting to show up in the earth? Jesus was showing up. Jesus, and it said the mountain would stand forever. And we see that God can give an evil people an insight into his plan. You see, Nebuchadnezzar, he would at least try to make Babylon last forever. But he was given a dream by God, an evil king by a good God. Now, he was just an instrument, but what happened? Daniel was promoted. You see, even an evil king was given a dream by a good God about how his kingdom would eventually fall, and the next kingdom would stay a little bit, it would fall. The next kingdom would stay, it would fall. But there was one kingdom coming, one kingdom that would stand forever. You see, it was given Daniel the chance, though, to be able to show the dream, and then all of a sudden, God promoted him. Even in his captivity, Daniel at this point, he was a captive. He was almost a prisoner, kind of. But then all of a sudden, Daniel was promoted to rule over the whole province of Babylon. And he was also the chief prefect, which is someone who was able to carry out discipline and orders in the kingdom. So God used an evil person in the right position to promote a good person in the wrong position. All of a sudden, you got godly men in control of the kingdom, an evil kingdom. But that's how God works. And we see Jesus Christ being the kingdom that will stand forever. And what happens as soon as you get a godly man in there? What happens? He appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province. And so all of a sudden, we have some captives in their own position. All of a sudden, good men in the right position. Whatever you're struggling with today, or in your life, or moments in your life, it seems like just one thing after the other. It's like you just can't get ahead. In Daniel's captivity, he wasn't even expecting God to move at this moment, but God showed up. And he took him out of captivity, still having some troubles, still working on himself even, but he took him out of captivity into actual authority while he was there. So whatever you're struggling with, God has got you. Now, I don't know how he's going to move. I don't know when he will, because Daniel was scared of dying at one point. But all of a sudden, he was given that dream, and that dream changed really Israel's life within the Babylonian Empire. It changed his life. And that is chapter 2 of Daniel.